Hello, it is 6 o'clock and we are slowly about to start with our second meeting of series Residentuu. That is a series of lectures organized by Ensemble U. And this year our subject is music criticism. And Levi, if you would put your microphone off. Yeah, that's great. And this time we have guests from Finland, Kare, Eskola, and then Jaani, Länsio, very experienced critics or journalists who have huge experience in talking about music and writing about it and thinking about it. And why Finland? Greatly because the culture of music criticism in Finland is remarkably strong. If we think about Takenheim and also the situation now that I understood that is quite flourishing. So I believe there is a lot to learn, and hereby today first Jaani and then Kare will talk, and they asked that if we have any questions, then let's write them in chat so they can answer those currently during their talk. And then later it's time to discuss and comment, and we have perhaps some thoughts or experiences from our experience with Ensemble U, so we can continue freely. But now, Kare and Jaani, please, it's all yours.
Thanks.
Yeah, hello, all you lovely people from Estonia. For me, it's a great honor to be here. It's a great honor that you asked me here, and it's a great honor to have Jaani here also. And yeah, we will be giving you a small presentation about music criticism from our points of views. In this series, in the beginning, Jeremy Strachan, he already gave a great presentation about the basics of music criticism, the history, the aesthetics, the different views, and so on. It was a bit academic for me, I think. I am not academic. I have studied musicology, but anyway, today we are not going to talk about history and not so very much about the aesthetics and that kind of stuff. But I will share here my screen and show what sort of thing we are going to talk about right now here, and then I will show it right here, like this. So, and exactly the wrong page. Let's see. Stop share for a moment. I'll check the beginning once more. Here we are right now. Yeah, it's always like this when you start. I even have two computers here going on, so it's a bit complicated to be on one computer and not on the other one. All right. So we are going to talk about criticism. Yes, we are going to talk about what it is and what it is not from our point of view. It's uh, uh, kind of question that has been going forever, and a question you want as many answers as possible, I suppose. And what we are going to talk specifically is the storyline, the narrative of the criticism, the narrative of the concert, how they interact. And we are going to talk about journalism because narratives and storylines are kind of what journalism is. And then we are talking about the control, how to control uh, the discourse of criticism, how to make it so that people talk about right things in music criticism. Uh, we will see. But one thing, yeah, the questions, there's room for discussion at the end of this meeting. But if you want to ask a question or make a comment, please write it in the chat window. I think it's the most convenient way. And we will then view it with Jaani. But I think it's time to introduce ourselves. There is Jaani. Go on.
Yes, and I will introduce you. Yeah, and also on my behalf, also thank you for asking me. It's really an honor to be around you and to talk about criticism. It's very close to my heart. So Kare is and always has been one of my great idols, and I've told you this, and you know this. But yeah, when I started as a music critic about 10 years ago, I studied lots and lots of Kare's reviews and listened to his radio shows on Yleisradio. So he has this, he tells it's the best and only record review program in Finland, and I think it's true. And it's a great program coming every Wednesday or so, and has 5 or 6 records every time, and Kare's very insightful reviews on them. So yeah, I think Kare is, and I've already told you, the best critic in Finland in my point of view, in my view. So here you have the best expert you can wish for.
But that is not all. Of course, I have also made some TV series and scripts, and I write for all the other magazines also here in Finland. But it's my main job in the radio. But the guy there, Jaani Länsio, he's a freelance music writer, and yeah, he's the man. You want somebody to write your concert notes, you usually here in Finland you call Jaani. All the major orchestras and major festivals use his services about that. He's also a host for pre-concert talks in Helsinki Philharmonic, has been for a few years. So he's the guy who finds the storyline for any concert. So I would not say that he's a gatekeeper in Finnish music life. He's more or less like a doorman. Invites you inside and tells what is going on here. And Jaani also has his own blog about music, and his travel diaries are awesome. He has been making podcasts about music, so he's very much following the trends of music life in Finland more than me, I suppose. You should all check his web pages in jaanilansio.fi. Yeah, so that's about us. We are not academic researchers of music criticism, except Jaani, who has made his pro-graduate thesis about Finnish music critic legend Seppo Heikinheimo. But yeah, time to begin. And the story starts from Sandbox, I think. I was on a sandbox with my kids and with my friend who's a director in a theater, and she has studied in Germany. And in Germany, there's a excellent tradition of theater criticism. There's a lot of media coverage of theater. There's a tradition of cultural discussion about theater. Well, theater is a big thing in Germany, and Germany is a big country. So there is for every major production, there is a lot of discussion. So it's great to be a director of theater in Germany, but it's not great for the reasons you think it is. It's not about the kind of there's lots of theater criticism before the plays and after the plays and so on. And my friend said that it's great, but it's not great for the reasons you think. The reasons for if you think about the point of director point of view, so why is it great that you have so good and so much theater criticism in Germany? Well, let's see. Here we are, and here we go. Uppestaiga. Tuonne piti mennä. No, stop share once again. I will have to find my proper window here. All right. Yep. So it's never as easy as you think. Here we go. All right, hopefully you see my presentation. All right. The criticism is great, not because of feedback, because for feedback, it is too late. If you are a director of theater, you need the feedback before the play, not afterwards. So for a director and for art, there is better ways of feedback. They should come before, they should come in the process, and there's no use of kind of a feedback for the ready-made stuff. And if there's lots of criticism, it's not good for publicity, because with a good history of criticism and healthy criticism, people know that it's not for public relations. Media and criticism is kind of a proud to have its own power, and it wants to make its own decisions. So if you want some publicity, you will get a backslash from a critic. Criticism is never for publicity. And it's not for progress of art. Some say that critics and artists should kind of work towards the same goal for better art. But from history, we'll kind of learn that daily media coverage is always kind of arbitrary. Daily media criticism never understands where art is going. The understanding comes a lot later. It comes a lot slower. So criticism in an ideal world, it's not for these things. So what is it for? So the director who was sitting in the sandbox said that in Germany, the plays are different to the plays of Finland. In Germany, the plays are more focused on one subject or one view. They are more open to different interpretations. They are not full of things. They are not full of meanings. They are not trying to include all the world to one play. And in Finland, the plays are more dense. They try to say everything about everything in one play. And they try to make sure that there is a specific meaning on offer and people get that specific one meaning. So the point is that in Germany, it's great to be a theater director because you can trust that there is a cultural discussion before and after to support the work. So if you give one view in the play, the discussion gives you all the other points of views. So if you leave room for different interpretations, it's not your fault. In Germany, it's your chance, and the discussion will take the chance and enjoy it. And in Finland, we have these plays that are so dense because we don't trust the discussion. We don't trust that the play doesn't have to do it all. There is a discussion that fulfills the meaning. So this is a great thought about criticism. Art, it kind of creates space for meaning and invites people to fill that space. And good art, it always creates a bigger space, and the invitation to fill it with meaning, it's more compelling. So, and people come and fill the space with interpretations and meaning, and this is quite clear for all of us who are working in the art. But it's always important to see criticism as part of this specific process. So, if there is a healthy system for cultural discussion, the artist can trust that the work will get its meaning, and the artist can trust that the discussion is not about wrong notes or about some specific point of view that is lacking or wrong or so on. So this is the kind of way that criticism makes art better. But of course, there are problems in this stuff. In small country with small media, there is not kind of that much people to discuss. There is not so much kind of educated views. So normally the discussion and the criticism is far from this ideal world. But nowadays, it's the kind of discussion, it's more about cliques, it's more about identity politics. If you're not for the artwork, you're against it. It is nowadays the discussion is more or less polarizing. So that's in the ideal world, but Jaani will tell you more about the criticism in the real world, in the world of journalism, and it's totally different from this ideal. Jaani.
Yes, thanks, Kare. So around 1950s, I would say, maybe 60s, most critics were academics or composers, and they wrote their reviews based on their expertise, and they had lots and lots of space to speculate everything, and they didn't have to sell the paper. But things got really different around the 70s, 80s, and especially 90s, and now it's a whole different story with reviews, because all critics are basically journalists who are working, of course, for the paper and for the benefit of the paper. And since papers don't sell anymore, they have to gather clicks. They have to draw people to read their reviews. So let me ask you a question. If you are browsing through the webpage of a newspaper, what kind of stories are you drawn in, or what kind of a headline gets your attention? If I compare it to your normal day when you're strolling around the city, everything goes smoothly, and sun is shining, people are walking around you. What kind of action gets your attention? Maybe a car crash, or a train crash, or a fire, or something scandalous, something tragic, something that is out of the ordinary, I would say. So when a journalist has to work for the newspaper, for the benefit of the newspaper, for the clicks of his readers, he has to write something that is some kind of, it has to create a scandal to make it big, to get lots of readers, to get lots of clicks. So this is the situation nowadays. If you want to have a big chunk of readers, you have to write in a way that creates talk around the critic. And I don't know if you got the examples of 2 or maybe 3 reviews that were about the pianist Lang Lang and the conductor Jaap van Zweden and the New York Philharmonic. But if you have read them, I would say that these reviews are prime examples of a critic getting the biggest attention to himself. It's not about the concert, it's about the critic and what the critic said. It's not about how the concert was or how the pianist played. It's about the critic, and it's I would say it's not exactly a good thing that the critic is the main player here, but that's the situation. The critic is kind of creating a drama, a big arc of tragedy, when he or she writes a bad review of a great performer or a popular performer, let's say it that way. But if you did read those reviews, please comment on the chat platform and tell me if there was something that made you think, I don't know, something about the concert itself or the record itself, or did it actually draw attention to the critic? I would say that the main point of criticism nowadays, okay, there is a point that a critic has to can provide something great for the art world and for the cultural field, but most of the time we do talk about criticism itself and not about the art. I would say that. What would you say, Kare, for that really opinionated view on criticism?
Yeah, that's quite true. If I take the first standing point from the first point from the critics we read, there's a kind of a strange relationship between the critic and the audience, because the critic really said that the audience is stupid. Uh, So he or she clearly kind of was not part of the concert audience or part of the people who were enjoying the concert. And that was one particular point that reveals that, all right, he's not part of the audience, he's part of the journalism, he's part of the newspaper. I think there was nothing wrong with that if you take the point of a newspaper. So that was the first thing that was quite clear from the examples.
Yeah, sure. And this is of course an integral part of journalism or music criticism, that the critic is someone who is both commenting on the audience and the situation itself and the event and the art more than probably a normal member of the audience, of course.
Sorry. Hello, first of all.
Hey.
I'm from U Ensemble, but I wanted to ask. It wasn't very clear for me what you meant by this asking about these examples, because I did read the examples, and if you take, for example, this long related what do you call it, then review or article. Yes, it did draw a lot of attention to a writer, whoever it was. I think it was anonymous, or the name wasn't really revealing who it was. But on the other hand, I did find it meaningful for me, the writing, for the reason not it being so negative and not so much talking about what really happened in the concert, but I had an impression that the reviewer or the writer took the position talking about exactly the I don't know if I can call it the storyline here now, that of this artist, of this very artist, and what it represents as a phenomena as such. I mean, I could imagine in some kind of parallel world similar article about, let's say, and don't get me wrong, like let's say about Arvo Pärt, for example. In that regard, that Arvo Pärt is a very well-known and beloved composer. He's a phenomena on its own, and he has a very strong trademark. And you hardly ever find any critique, meaningful critique, written about his music or the concerts his music was played, because it is mainly the Arvo Pärt's how do you say, image or the music, what it represents, what this concert is about. And that's something I had the impression that the reviewer in this case saw in Lang as impersonating some kind of like a aesthetic or an attitude or a type of let's say music or cultural feature, and therefore I found it somehow meaningful that he at least tried to describe it in a negative way, in the opposite way, of course, but through this very, very colorful language. I think he was trying to actually just portray this kind of phenomena. And yes,
I think it was a good article because if the focus is or if the for example Arvo Pärt, the phenomena or the image is bigger than the music or the specific performance, so then the critic does right thing when he or she focuses on the image or the phenomenon and not to the performance of the music. I think it's a good call to focus on that stuff. And for example, if I write a review about Arvo Pärt's music, it's always difficult to kind of separate me from the long tradition of CDs and long tradition of the way people should listen to it, and it's always difficult to separate myself from the fact that many people consider this music very important and very meaningful. So you always take this with you when you are writing the review. Jaani.
Yes, and that was a great view on the Lang Lang review. But what I mostly mean that if a critic uses that kind of language, it automatically draws your attention towards the critic and not the phenomenon he's talking about. This is what I mean. It's so colorful and so mean that we just have to, like now we are talking about the review itself. And this is the I don't know how to call it, but this is the problem, that the more colorful or the more scandalous the review is, the farther we get from the actual object of the review.
I understand now what you mean, but then at least in Estonian context, if I may comment, I think that we passed this stage of music critics trying to be even scandalous, because honestly, I don't think it raises a lot of clicks. It collects a lot of clicks, even if it was scandalous. I mean, I think in this case we have, I guess, given up in Estonia about collecting clicks on that, unless, of course, exactly if it was a case of for example, very negative critique on Arvo Pärt, which would be nearly impossible, I guess, if it well published in newspapers. And you know, never. I don't want to talk about Arvo Pärt. It's just describing the situation.
One very good thing was Jaani chose the articles, and he chose the Philip Roth's writing, the great novelist Philip Roth, writing about perhaps imaginary scene of a pianist playing. And it was a sort of a critic I would very much like to read, but of course it's not possible in traditional media, in Finnish Yleisradio or in Helsingin Sanomat or any other big newspaper. It was very well, emotional, great way of writing, and it showed how a article or review might be written if all of us critics were as good as Philip Roth in writing. It was great to have that kind of a part of a novel in between those articles. I would like more of that.
Yeah, we need more Philip Roths in journalism. Should we go on with the slides? Yeah. It's your call next.
Yep. Well, critics need the narrative. They need the scandal. They need to make something fall from very high to very low. They have to have some kind of a drama or storyline, and critics need it. So then you should basically give it to them. So of course there's if there is not a narrative inside, so the critic will make it by himself or herself for the needs of himself or herself or for the needs of the media. And there is always drama in playing wrong notes or failing or focusing a big image instead of big music and so on. So there's drama in, and there's tension between good and bad. There is drama and tension between right or wrong, and there's drama in prophecy and then fulfilling the prophecy. So that's why the narratives of criticism are kind of inclined to judgment, good or bad, right or wrong or so. But yeah, you actually can control it so that the judgment is about right things, so that the judgment or the narrative is about things you want, things that are meaningful for an artist and perhaps for art. So if you make your concerts kind of journalistic, or fill your concerts with narrative you choose, you make the life of the critic easier. Critics are as lazy as other journalists. If there's a story ready, they will take it. So you cannot decide the outcome of the kind of judgment. You can open a discourse and control that. And so that discourse kind of means the things you are discussing about. And because criticism is part of this discussion process, it's part of the process where you give meanings and decide what is important. So it's good if you decide the discourse. So it's a way of shifting focus from right notes or wrong notes or good performance or bad performance or good piece of music, to shift focus from that to the storyline you want. And I will show you the things I never see in program notes. I never see them in CD covers. I never see them in press releases. Those things, they are never about values, meanings. They are never about people behind the concert, and that is pretty stupid. So if you want to decide the discourse, or if you want to control the storyline, never tell what you play, because that is self-evident. Tell why you play, and tell your values, tell your motives before the concert, in the press release and in the program notes and so on. Tell about the persons behind the process, who decided what to play and why, what kind of discussion was going on and so on. And don't tell how the work is composed, but tell it how it feels to you. That's maybe it's a bit difficult for you to think, but anyway, how did you find the piece? Why is it important to you? What are the keys to the meaning of the piece for yourself? Tell about playing and practicing it. Tell how it feels to play it, how it feels in your hand, how it feels in your head. Tell what the piece of music kind of tells to you. Tell about the body. Do not tell about the mind. And then, of course, human interest. Tell the stories behind the work, the stories that happened during the practicing sessions and so on. They are always good fuel for a good storyline. And never tell about history. Tell always about the present, why it is important right now to play that piece of music. So these are kind of basic, powerful tools that offer some keys to audience. They offer some keys to critics. They offer some keys for discussion. And if you use these tools, you kind of make it very easy to control what people are talking about. Very easy, so that the focus is on the things you want and you think that are important in the art. But one very important thing here, I must add, when you talk about these things in previews and pre-talks and program notes and press releases, you always have to focus on one thing, maximum of two things. Because if you want to tell something, if you want something to go through the media, if you want something that people to grab something, you have to focus on one good thing. I was working as an information assistant for my wife when she made a concert tour. It was a special concert tour. It was a carbon dioxide free concert tour on a bicycle. So that's the first thing: carbon dioxide free bicycle tour. To save the world, of course, because of the carbon dioxide free, and also to follow the footsteps of Finnish vagabond fiddlers. So two things: global thing, save the world, and local thing, kind of follow footsteps of ancestors and Finnish fiddlers and so on. So I focused on these two things. And yeah, I got a full 2 pages in Helsingin Sanomat, 2 pages in Hufvudstadsbladet, always an article in local newspapers and so on. And they always focused on these things because they were clear, and I made them clear, and they were kind of very sharp. So if you are creating the storyline, please focus on one or two things. But anyway, these are, as always, kind of a theoretic guidelines of controlling the storyline for critics. Jaani will tell you how you do it in practice.
Yeah, it seems like you are always the ideal world and I'm the harsh reality now. So yeah, I have been writing program notes and advertisement and press releases for about 10 years now for orchestras. And yes, the ideal world is that you choose 3, maybe 4 pieces of music to be played in a concert, and all the pieces there are of the same subject, more or less. It's like a symphony or a sonata. 4 movements, all of them create one big piece of art. It doesn't work like that because the soloist usually has preference piece, the conductor then has his or her own preference piece, and the orchestra maybe doesn't have players enough to perform the piece. So it's like a Frankenstein monster, created like pieces from here and there, and now there is your concert. Of course, for a small ensemble, it's easier to have 4 different pieces that all have the same kind of subject. But if you do not have a common theme, you can create one. And how it's created? Well, give the concert a name. One good rule of thumb is to have a name that captures the readers or listeners' imagination. It can be like revolution is now, or the emperor's new clothes, or it's only a dream. Something that makes the listener think of the subject. And here the listener is, of course, the critic. Then, when you have the name, you have to write, or don't have to, but I do, a very small 1 paragraph, a note that has everything that the concert has, like the back cover of a book. That draws the listener or the critic further in the concert and the theme itself. And at this time, you ideally write the program notes that are all on the same subject, even if all the paragraphs in the program note are individually written about a piece, and it can be about the history of the piece, but of course about the present of the piece is always better if it can be done. Of course, if you can have pre-concert talks, then go ahead and talk about the subject, about the theme. I have done pre-concert talks a lot with the Helsinki Philharmonic. They usually are about 15 to 20 minutes, and we choose a subject if the concert has a subject, and then we talk about 20 minutes about the subject. A listener and a critic at this point cannot not write about the subject. And this is how you kind of force all of the critics and the listeners alike to follow your narrative of choice. This is, well, politicians do this well. They are they have marketing agencies and spin doctors who really decide what to talk about in the media and how to talk about the politician in the media. But you can also follow the example of politicians, even if it sounds pretty bad, but you can do it. And marketing and PR is the way to do it. And this is how it's possible to do. What do you think, Kare? You're more of a journalist than I am. I'm a marketing man. This is my fantasy.
Usually, I am forced to write about stuff. If now I review quite a lot of this kind of Corona CDs, so I call them the CDs that are or records that have been created during the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, I have to. The review is about how it fulfills the job, the ideal. Does it make me feel, or does it focus on the problems of COVID-19 in a way that is meaningful for me, and so on. And it kind of the problem is that if it's very bad music, should I focus on that more? And normally it's great to decide that, all right, this is so badly played that I have to once again tell that this emperor has no clothes, and tell that, all right, this is a COVID-19 CD, but you should not listen to that. Yeah, I'm forced to do stuff. And it's, as a critic, it makes my life easier. It's easier to write about CDs or concerts with a good storyline.
Yeah. Journalists are pretty lazy.
They're extremely lazy.
Yeah.
And hearing questions, you presented us with your program notes for your concert before, and I don't quite read Estonian, but understood some of it. Mitä on musiikki? What is music? Was the kind of a focus of those pieces. And it's a good question always, but it's not kind of a sharp narrative. There is no tension about it. Is this music or these pieces redefine music, or well,
maybe a better storyline would be, is this even music?
yeah, the problem is that why do you want to ask that question right now?
Yeah. Well, there you have it.
If I may comment,
Yep.
then just to illustrate a little bit from our side, I like very much that you bring in this aspect of story line building and setting kind of like path to the critic to walk by. We've had some few very funny examples us failing in it, and therefore maybe that explains the last title or the last text. I can describe it just briefly, a situation, almost an anecdote, but we have several of those. So since we've worked quite a lot together with one conceptual theatre director, or kind of like conceptual dance theatre director from Estonia, Mart Kangro, then these kind of elements have been brought into our shows often, and we've been discussing, the stage situation and context and these kind of related issues, And this is something where the context, or building up the kind of shifts of the context, are certainly part of this kind of storyline of that. It's the part of the main concept of the concert at all. So we've been, on the Philharmonic stage, we've been playing music where it's kind of semi-staged situations, where it starts to shift into something else, and, or these kind of things. And we thought we've been bringing it out so clearly, where people would start to, I don't know, do knit during the pieces, or, to play chess, or this kind of thing, that it is slowly brought in, and then you would imagine that this couldn't be even more clearly, where it leads. And then you have the critic writing even wouldn't notice that we are trying to shift the context and asks, who is this composer, Mart Kangro, the theater director who worked with us, and why is he writing such a boring music, kind of questions. And you are setting the path, you are setting up the storyline. And so my question would be that, it's also a responsibility of the critic to find these, pathways which are set, And I'm very happy when the critique is about whether there is actually a storyline, and I find it rather funny and pathetic when the storyline is violently built, like in this orchestra program, where there is no connection between the pieces whatsoever, and then it's somehow tied together because this would need to be there or something, through some kind of not necessary subject at all, and I would like the critique to be much more about whether there is a storyline, or whether conceptually this program would make any sense, and I think the points what you brought out in the slide, what the players should be preparing. This is exactly what I would want to critique to be addressed at, and very rarely, very seldom it does, I feel, as a performer.
Well, if you play with the conventions of the concert, that there's a piece of music and a performer and composer, and it goes like it should be. When you are playing with that, it's very normally very well, might be hard for audience or even a bad critic. It's difficult to kind of focus on stuff outside this convention. It's very stupid, but when you are doing something out of the box, you never can underestimate the stupidity of audience or critics. Me as an avid concert goer and expert in music, in contemporary music, I always enjoy when those conventions are somehow cracked. But others might feel it's totally frightening, and they just focus on the traditional stuff, and because it's safe and it's easy to focus on that. Yeah, the audience and the critics would be better if they did their homework better, but they don't. Jaani.
Yeah, you cannot force feed the critic to write like you wish, and that's a fact. And you have to just have to get used to stupid critics.
Yeah, but you can always start the discussion. If there's a article or review in the newspaper or any media that is totally kind of about wrong things,
Yeah,
it's a great idea to write them and ask them to publish your what is it called in English, vastine, response.
yeah. I mean, yeah,
And
yeah.
and start the discussion about what this was about and why it was misinterpreted so badly.
Absolutely. And social media is a great platform for that if you just can keep the discussion civilized.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a good place to get the new slide.
Yep. You were as a band and as an artist, you were kind of disappointed that the music criticism is not, there's not very much of it in Estonia, and the situation is, and the quality is bad and so on. And that's quite understandable. When I was a bit younger, I thought that, yeah, the professional music criticism in a music in a newspaper is about, it is that thing. It is the music critic that has power to say what is good music, and that is the important thing. But when I studied the cultural studies, I understand that actually it is not the case. The storyline is created and the discourse is opened and the discussion is held elsewhere mostly. And professional music critic in the media is one of the, or she is one of the least meaningful persons deciding what music means and what music needs and what is a good direction and so on. It's when I studied cultural studies, I kind of found out that the real situation is a lot more kind of pluralistic, and the discussion is held in many different places. And Let me share you something here. Yeah. So who has got the power? These are the kind of very important music critics that exist. This is only 10 or so examples. Of course, there's many more. There's a teacher. Teacher is a merciless critic who has got lots of power, lots of authority. His or her profession is to tell others how to do it. It's the biggest critic of them all. Then there's a musician who practices by himself. He is the same thing, but without a teacher. He's always thinking about, is this good? Is this bad? How should I make this better? What it means? How can I get this meaning through the music and through the audience? There's an artistic director who decides who plays what. There's concert promoter who decides who plays what and to whom. There's audience in the concert. We here in these streaming concerts always find that the live audience is very important thing, and it gives you lots of feedback right there. There's the audience in the bar afterwards. That's for me as the ideal place or ideal form of music criticism or music discussion. There's communication. There's it happens immediately afterwards. There's the shared experience. There's good atmosphere. It's face to face, and of course there are shared values because the discussor. Well, they both decided to go to the concert. They both invested the time, so they want to discuss it in the bar afterwards and give it some meaning. There's a blogosphere. It's smaller than it used to be. There's the social media that happens in a small bubble and doesn't create a good discussion normally, but it creates a shared experience that is a good thing. And then there is media. It's quite low in the list and quite small thing. Then there's metacriticism or cultural studies. Happens in universities, in articles and books. It's very slow, but it's very good when you are defining the meaning of music or filling the space that art creates. And of course, there's politics, about money, about values in the society. So the critic in the media really is the only visible part of this invisible network. The media is about visibility, but it does not mean that it should be the most powerful thing. Critic is only always reflecting the society and the art. There's more kind of things going on in the society than in professional music criticism. And if you kind of focus and see the criticism or discussion in those structures, then the lack of this media criticism or bad quality of it doesn't feel so important anymore to you. But yeah, for me, it's always kind of it was eye-opening to study cultural studies when I found that this is where the good stuff happens. We just don't focus on it. But of course, there are times when the media has so much power and that people go blind and they don't see the culture or society behind it. They don't see the meaning of these other very meaningful sources of criticism. They only see the media, and that is unhealthy. That kind of a mistake happens usually when there is a small bubble, small country, small cultural, new culture, or when there is homogenic culture, same music for all and the same newspaper for all, like Helsingin Sanomat in Finland and Yleisradio in Finland. And the same kind of a unhealthy focus on media criticism, it's also from my point of view, it's lack of self-confidence. Because if you compare yourself to others all the time, you give power to the critic outside of you, not to the culture that is inside you all. The culture that is more important, the culture that is the meaningful place of discussion. That kind of unhealthy situation, it happened in Finland in last century. Seppo Heikinheimo was the person who kind of made that happen. Of course, it was also about Helsingin Sanomat and our lack of self-confidence. Jaani Länsio will tell you more about Seppo Heikinheimo's traumatic influence on Finnish culture.
Yeah, I did mute. Okay, thank you, Kare. Seppo Heikinheimo. I wrote my graduation thesis on Seppo Heikinheimo, and especially his reviews on the Helsinki Philharmonic in the last decade of his life. He was the most influential critic in Finland, I would say, from as early as 1960s all the way to his suicide in 1997. He was the main critic in Helsingin Sanomat, probably the most widely read journalist, really a journalist, not just a critic, but a journalist in Finland in the 80s and in the 90s. Very, very scandalous guy. He was, as I'm writing here, more feared than respected. One of his trademarks was that everything was even hot or cold, but very rarely was it in between. The concerts, the artists, they were either masters of their craft or just total losers with nothing to say about the music. And really, that's the way Seppo created his notoriety on music criticism. What's interesting is that because of his style, he was a very, very well-read man, and also could craft really like very fine sentences. He's a great writer, I would say. But he was widely read, even outside the cultural life. He's still well known after 25 years of his death. And also people who didn't follow the music life in Finland knew his name and knew how he was. And one of the reasons was that there was a comedy show in Finland that has this character, Seppo, or Sepon Seppo, who was a really mean critic. He was a very influential man, of course, because he was so well known, but also because he had his hands on many sides in the society. He was, I believe, chairman, or at least a member of the board in Music Teachers Association. Also, briefly, a chairman of the Finnish society that was boosting the Finnish culture over Swedish language. And he knew the culture ministers and the officials and could persuade them to follow his opinions. He left a heritage, I would say, of fairly timid criticism in Finland. He kind of showed what kind of damage one can do by being so mean and so hard-edged on musicians and the cultural life. One of his best known scandals was that, okay, first of all, he said that he found Olli Mustonen, the famous pianist, in 79 or something. That wasn't the case, but he really promoted the young pianist for a decade. And after 10 years or so, he started to criticize him heavily, like really heavily, in Helsingin Sanomat. And after doing like 5 or 6 really mean criticism reviews about Olli Mustonen, Olli published a statement that said that he will not perform in Helsinki anymore if Seppo Heikinheimo will work for Helsingin Sanomat. Also at that time, there were 43 musicians who gathered a statement that asked for his resignation from Helsingin Sanomat. And not very much after that, he wrote about Aulis Sallinen's opera Kullervo that was performed in Los Angeles, that it was a really a failure, a really big failure of Finnish National Opera to go there in Los Angeles and perform this awful piece of music, and even the audience in Los Angeles thought it was awful. All of these criticisms, all of these reviews gathered a lot of responses in the magazines, and they were talking months and months about this Kullervo case, about like really trivial subjects like how long did the applause actually go on in Los Angeles. There were people testimonials of them checking their watches when the applause started and after they stopped, and they were talking about whether it was 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 11 minutes, or is it long or is it short. Anyway, Seppo was a very scandalous guy, all in all, and that the downfall was pretty harsh. I don't remember that time that well. I remember meeting him, but I do remember that when he died, there were lots of talk, and before, also just a couple of years before he died, that criticism, reviews, the culture of critics has to change. And Helsingin Sanomat took a position that they will change their style of writing. And I think we are still living in that moment that a critic cannot say too much about the concert and cannot be too mean. And it's the generation of Heikinheimo and post Heikinheimo are still living. So and Kare, a little bit younger, a little bit older than me, remembers better, and probably knows something about the time in the 90s that when this was going on.
Yeah. The good thing about Seppo Heikinheimo, it's very easy to say from my point of view. When I was teenager, maybe between 10 years and 13 years or so, I read Helsingin Sanomat. I read the comics, and then I read the Seppo Heikinheimo's reviews about classical music. And I lived far away from Helsinki, never watched or heard the concerts, but I've read the reviews. So that is a good thing. It was interesting. It was a good journalism. That's plainly a very good thing. But there was a question in the chat. Do you consider a very strong critic even dangerous? And yes, it was dangerous. Not only dangerous, it was totally bad thing for Finnish cultural life. The focus was on good or bad, not on the meaning of the music. And always when there is too much power for one point of view, there is lack of different points of views. And if there's only one point of view, it's never good for any art or any culture. That's why Seppo Heikinheimo and Helsingin Sanomat was not only dangerous, it was totally disastrous. But the tradition of very timid criticism, it's a kind of natural reaction to that kind of situation. Whenever I read Helsingin Sanomat nowadays and check the reviews of concerts, the style of Seppo Heikinheimo still echoes in my head, and I still think that this is very timid. This does not say anything about the concert. This is very careful. This is very and it's also a very sad situation, and it's for he died decades ago, and of course this is only my feeling, but still there is a tradition, don't you think, Jaani? There is a tradition going on right now, and it's unhealthy, maybe.
Yeah, well, it's not as unhealthy as Seppo's style, but it is a little bit unhealthy to only provide content. I see criticism or the press criticism as content providing.
Yeah. And the situation kind of corrected itself by when the media field kind of changed, so that there are lots of different bubbles and lots of different sources of media for people, and the Helsingin Sanomat is not so important anymore, and nowadays there could not be that strong critic anymore. I think it's
No, you're right. Not after Seppo, I think.
Yeah, it's a good times for a reader and bad times for Finnish music, but our culture survived even Seppo Heikinheimo. I hope.
Sorry, may I ask?
Yeah.
May I ask? You brought up some interesting issues. We're talking about Heikinheimo and even us here. We have heard some legendary, critiques by him and so on. He's kind of a legend also in Tallinn and around here. But I was thinking, when you brought it out, these problematics related to him, on one hand you said that it was kind of there were some good points about it, him being so intense and so somehow polarized that it draw even attention and, let's say, clicks, and brought in some new audiences maybe to read this reviews and all that. And on the other hand, it being only concentrating about evaluation of music or this cultural event was maybe bad for the discourse about the meaning of it itself. So I was just wondering, would the ideal situation be then that the critique would come from outside of the context, and because then they wouldn't have so much power, or also maybe unnecessary ties inside of this small circle as Finland and Estonia are, or on the other hand, you started by talking about the importance of building the storyline, and this is somehow a contextual question. Of course, you could see this related to a larger movement. Let's say, if we talk about, let's say, conceptual art, it's not so much related to the very place, but it's a larger movement or way of thinking or a discourse. But so maybe we should be searching for an ideal critique who is not too tied to the situation, and then at the same time very much aware of storylines and these possible discourses the artist might be setting up.
Yeah.
And maybe this would be a way out to this puzzle, or what do you think about that? Because this is very much something that we feel around here, is that in Estonia everybody knows everybody, and I'm sure in Finland it's very similar. Yeah. Well, and this creates a very unhealthy environment for people to have a serious discussion about certain issues.
Yeah. First thing about you mentioned the discourse that Seppo Heikinheimo opened, and it was a good discourse because Seppo Heikinheimo opened. Well, he defined that music is important. You have to. Good music is very important, and bad music is very important. It's very good, very important for us as readers and nation and so on to have good music. So music is important, and that is a very very great discourse opened by Seppo Heikinheimo by his style and by his content. But anyway, about the way of being outside, if you think about Seppo Heikinheimo, he was of course outsider from some circles, and then he was very much insider in certain circles, and having a good sauna with all the Russian musicians, and then writing a critic of the review next day about the concert, and always good reviews about Russian musicians. But anyway, I think the connections between musicians and critics, they are not difficult thing, or they are not something that must be kind of cut. Because if you have connections to people, if you have connection to your band, you know everybody, and you know what you are doing and why, then you are the person to kind of find the meaning and write about it. Of course, you are not the person to kind of decide about the grants or write bad criticism in a big newspaper. But you are you are a good person to understand the meaning and write about it. So the connections it's not never a problem. It's just the way you use. All the critics in history have been the biggest and best and first have been musicians and composers and very much insiders. Of course, traditionally they wrote with a pseudonym or something, but everybody knew who it was, and so it was all about connections, and I think it's a good thing. But anyway, if my close friend who has been my guest in my house makes a CD, I do not review it. Of course, that's kind of self-evident. You don't have to worry about that kind of things.
Yeah, but Seppo could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. But he should not have.
Yeah.
I hop in for a second. Perhaps soon we could have also space for questions. Do you want to sum up?
I have one more slide here.
Please.
Because we were thinking about, when I was asked to this series, you said that this series is needed because there is no good music criticism in Estonia. And I was quite quite astonished. Can it be true? What are the reasons? But then I sort of checked out, and yeah, there is not very much Estonian music criticism. And so I was thinking about the problems, and we were discussing with Jaani about the problems behind this, and it's quite clear why there might be no criticism in Estonia. The reasons against it are the same as in Finland. It's a small country, not very much people to discuss, not very much different views. It was a homogenic nation with people kind of focusing on same things and so on. And of course, there was a very small media in Estonia, and there's a traditional way of discussion where if you say something about the artwork or about another people, they kind of think that that it's criticism, and it's not adding to the discussion. It's kind of threatening you if you make a different interpretation or so. So it's a small country, small media way of discussion that are kind of against music criticism. But of course, that's not the case because there's much more to it. Let's see here, because of course Estonia, at least from Finnish point of view, seems to be a superpower. Huge musical activity, and the meaning of music for the national identity is very, very important. So one might think that the nation would be fulfilled of discussion about the meaning of music, should be fulfilled with good quality cultural discussion, where kind of every interpretation, every comment makes the art more rich and more complete. Yeah, but then we were thinking with Jaani, is it because of Soviet colonialization? Because during Soviet times, the criticism was a tool for political power, cultural suppression, and it was not about discussion; it was about judgment, what is good for the state, and so on. So if you have no kind of media criticism, it's a totally healthy reaction to get rid of all that kind of traditional from the Soviet times, when it was totally unhealthy and totally no good at all. What do you think?
Yeah, well, maybe as a same kind of situation as we had with Heikinheimo, that there is just too much power in critics' hands, and when that power is stripped away, then you don't want anyone else to have it anymore. I don't know. I haven't really thought about Estonian music criticism. I really thought that it's about the same as in Finland.
But you tell me, Tarmo, Tavi.
Well, I'm not sure about the Soviet time influence. I wouldn't think that it's any remarkable connections in there. It's more the situation nowadays, and then we talked quite much about it last time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, Tavi.
No, it was just. I think it's also very much related to the. Now, I mean, last years we are talking about the change of the media's role, of course, and then this shifting to to the social media taking over a lot of roles of the media and so on, and so these kind of shifts are also probably something to do with it, but. Our focus is mainly, of course, on the contemporary music. I mean, with this group, we do play other music elsewhere, of course, like some hardcore experimental stuff, or most of us play in National Symphony Orchestra or such. So I guess we cannot really generalize also, but I I really liked your ideal critique place to be the bar after the concert. I think this is definitely still there. And I guess it was also in the Soviet time, maybe even more. And I like this idea of having this kind of discussion club to be the maybe most fruitful and maybe let's say maybe progressive one as a space. But media, I think I would blame the general media situation for and also since our capitalist history is quite young, and I think just very how to say, the decisions are made by money. You know, I think this and I think we haven't had yet decades to realize that money might not be the most important thing still. So I think we are still in the phase where money matters more than anything.
Yeah, but in cultural discussion, in the cultural forums, where the kind of it is decided what kind of art is meaningful and what does this mean for us as a nation or as me as a person, so on. That has never been about money, has it? I have here we thought that with Jaani that if there's if you want better music criticism, better discussion about music, do it yourself. Jaani will give you some directions.
Yeah, that's great thesis, that if you want something to happen, you have to make it happen. You just can't wait someone else to do it. And it's becoming easier and easier every year. And the traditional criticism is, I think, slowly fading out. The newspapers are not that powerful anymore. They have cut their criticism a lot. They are shorter. There are fewer of them. They are, as we have told you, less opinionated. And the one problem that is in traditional criticism in newspapers is that there is little or no interaction between readers and performers and critics. There is just this one opinion, and then it fades out in the universe and just it's like dust. So we have nowadays social media. You can become I would say a classical music influencer or something like that, by posting well-written analysis on what we just heard, like an hour ago. It's a lot quicker than the traditional criticism also. Like it used to be and still is, if you have a concert on Friday evening, you read about it on Sunday morning.
And it doesn't have to be about what we just heard. It can be about what should we hear and so on. The most meaningful musical content for me comes from musicians and composers and promoters and insiders who write blogs and articles and social media, whatever. So why don't you as a band just start writing about the meaning of music for you?
Yeah, and also just post concert talks. Like as soon as you hit the final chord, or 5 minutes after that, you can gather together and talk about what we have just heard and why. And there can be someone who leads the discussion, and hopefully the audience members can also ask questions and discuss about it. That's the most fruitful way of of criticism is to discuss about stuff, not to just write something and send it to the universe and there it goes.
You're absolutely right, and that's what we have been doing also. We have our own concert series in the Estonian national broadcast where we talk about music and play, and it alters, and we put quite a lot of effort organizing these kind of discussion sessions as we have with you, and we have also written articles in Musica magazine here about composers or about certain phenomena. We are trying to do our best in that, but I think it's very much it's a very good point you're writing, that it's also artists' duty to deliver.
And I think it's a good idea to not to make it in the situation or immediately after only. You have to have a kind of a continuous content that people can come and refer and check and so on. So the content must be always there, like this YouTube series is, and so on. But anyway, do it yourself. It's always the same thing here, and it's never about money. Kind of this quest for meaning. But there was a question for Ensemble U. Could you tell us?
Yes,
experience?
yeah, right. I read it and then we can talk a bit about that. But anyway, thank you very much. There was a lot of good ideas and things that we definitely will carry on discussing. So there is a question to Ensemble U in the chat. Could you tell us about some positive experience with music critics as well? I'm asking because many young people who study music critic or write music reviews have been asked to watch the seminar, and your general attitude toward music critics so far is quite rude. Even if you have some awful experiences, do you think it helps to get better results? And in your opinion, what is the meaning of reviewing your concert if you have done the best possible preparation of the material anyway? Well, yes, if we have made somebody feel somehow sorry or pain, then I'm sorry, I apologize for these kind of notes. About if you asked about positive experiences, then well, one nice example was published in SIRP, a review about DICE concerts, and then the writer really took care to take the scores and analyzed the pieces and also gave a really thorough thought. So this was one positive experiment, definitely, and then there have been many others too.
But anyway, it's a good storyline. It's a good tension. It's a good drama. If there's some tension between musicians and the audience, and the musicians and the critics, and so on, I think it's if they go to same direction always, it's very dull. There's no power or electricity in that stuff. So if there's some tension, it's also a good thing in my point of view.
If I would try to comment on that, our attitude towards music critique in this seminar has been quite rude, and that the young students who have been asked to take part in this might have a bad influence from it. First of all, unfortunately, I don't see many young students participating in this seminar. Mm-hmm. This is where this attitude of ours might start, is that we do invite people to talk along and to discuss these matters. And what I don't see is, I don't see young students you mentioned here. This is what would be the most fruitful and then about our negative attitude, I wouldn't call it such a negative attitude, but it's more about I think that artist tries to be as uncompromising in the art as it can be, and a good artist, I would say, and expects the same from the critic also. And it's not about a scale of negative, positive, or good and bad, but it's more about the dedication and homework and all these aspects of it. And then this is done. I think we are happy about the good article, what wouldn't be showing us in a good light, but would make a meaningful discussion, and we are absolutely welcoming it in that regard.
Yeah, but if you're expecting the same kind of dedication, same kind of work from journalists or critics, I suppose you will have to expect for a very long time, because our profession is different. It's yeah, there's huge amount of music going through our ears, going through our hands, huge amount of stuff we kind of do all the time, and normally it's yeah, for an artist you normally expect 100% commitment. For me as a journalist, I think 100% is well, it takes too much time and too much effort, and that's a reason for to kind of that's a good reason for this kind of tension, because we do it different. We our dedication is different. Our attitude towards one special concert is totally different from musicians' attitude. Yeah, it's not about the quality. It's about the way of working, I think, more or less. That the dedication to one concert, dedication to one thing, is very much smaller. Or yeah, it's different. It's a sad but true.
Thanks. It's a very honest point of view. I maybe ask now if someone has any questions or comments or thoughts, then you can freely open your camera and microphone and ask. Well, anyway, I think for me personally, thinking about the storyline and how to deal with the context, and then there is definitely many different approaches, but something to think about it. And also your idea that what can we do, and that we have done, maybe we can really go on and make some things stronger. There's some discussion in the chat. That I'm not going to read out right now. But so, are there any other open questions? Or some final thoughts? Well, in that case, I thank very much Jaani and Kare for joining in, and thank you really for this very dense and charged talk. We could carry on until the early morning, no question, but maybe it's enough for now over the Zoom, and we will continue with our comrades and co-fighters all the time where we meet.
And
so thank you a lot. The presentation or the event is also up on YouTube. If you want to re-listen something or suggest it to some friends or students, then feel free to check out our YouTube channel.
And you are most welcome to join us in Tallinn whenever it will be possible again for this after concert critique club with some beverages.
Yeah, we will would be very delighted to be able to come.
Yeah, there's one question coming up.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about these after concert things. I think this would happen a lot more if they would be a bit like planned by the organizers or the players, because I mean, just telling the people, to the audience, that you will be around like after half an hour somewhere and where and that you would be happy to discuss, because I think in most cases people just don't know where or how they could approach you.
Yeah, thank you. This is a very good point.
And it should be some kind of an informal setting, because if the players just ask immediately after they stop after the show is finished and the audience is still in the seats and looking at it, I think this would be too soon, because the audience is still in the formal concert mood and not ready to discuss informally. So there has to be some small change of setting, I think.
Thanks a lot, Taivo. Yeah, this is something that we can do. This is really something that we can perhaps improve. Okay, thanks a lot, and let's enjoy the music.